Welcome into the first ever college football preview 2020 with Robbie Veno. I am Drew Martin. We're going to be doing this every Tuesday going forward, guys. So let us know in the comments on Twitter at Rob Veno Sports or at Drew Martin Bets, also at Sports Memo or at WagerTalk on Twitter. Let us know if you like it. We're thinking about adding more days as heck, an open time in sports betting world is upon us, but we're trying to make the best of us and preview as many college football teams as possible, starting off with the head coaching changes and getting ready, as all sports bettors like to do before college football season, put ourselves in the best position possible to win. But without further ado, Robbie Veno, welcome in. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great, Drew. I'm happy to be doing something like this. Obviously, all of us, with the media commitments that we had through Sports Memo and Wager Talk, we're used to being busy, and right now just not as busy. So, the inception of this, I had buried myself in college football once the NBA and college hoops went away, and figured, you know what, why not start a college football show early? I know I texted you first, and then we went to Wager Talk to see what they thought about the idea, and here we are. Guys, normally we would not hit on college football until about mid-June at Sports Memo in recent years, and now we get to do it a little bit earlier. We know football's king, and it gives us a chance, Drew, to cover a lot more areas, expand upon this stuff where we don't have to rush through everything we're going to cover in one segment. You know, we used to do team conference previews. We were used to doing those annually. But inside those conference team previews, maybe in a 45-minute show, we would jam in coaching changes, schedule analysis, team-by-team position players. And, you know, it's a lot to ram into 45 minutes. So here we have a wider time frame to go ahead and do all of these individually. We will start with coaching staff changes. And it's crazy. You want college football so bad this season, and maybe I live in the bubble that believes that we're going to have it no matter what. But, hey, in a year where Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin are going to coach in the same conference, come on, don't take that away from us. We love college football, and I'm excited to go ahead out there and start with the coaching staff changes here today.
Absolutely. We're going to get right into that, Robbie. Without further ado, and guys, we're going in alphabetical order here of all the coaching changes in college football. One of the teams in that conference that Robbie Veno's talking about, what a lot of people think is the best division in college football. And I guess you don't have to be a rocket scientist to go kind of top to bottom here. Talking App State going first. We will have Arkansas, which we were just referring to. But App State coaching changes here, Robbie. I'll throw it over to you. We got Drinkowitz. He leaves App State, just one and done, I believe. A really good year, though, Robbie. I think you could make the argument that this is the best Sun Belt team ever. I know Georgia Southern's had some great teams in the past. Louisiana Lafayette might be forgetting some, but App State, Robbie, they ran the table this year, wiping the floor with a lot of their opponents. I mean, their only loss was a short week before Georgia Southern, which is obviously a tough team to prepare for in a short week. If I remember right, there was weather issues in that one. It was a nationally televised game, but they did drop it, and that was their only loss. They wiped the floor with pretty much everybody else, including a really good Louisiana Lafayette team in the last game of the season. Went on to win their bowl game as well against, I believe, UAB. But overall, Robbie, a new head coach here, new offensive coordinator, and DC here. So big changes for App State. Do you think they'll be able to continue their kind of dominance here of the Sun Belt, or do you think they're going to fall off a little bit this upcoming year?
Yeah, this particular case, Drew, Appalachian State is probably the best case scenario for all these teams we're going to go through, because as we go through them, there's going to be a common denominator. A whole bunch of them have full coaching staff changes and had 0 on-field spring practice sessions, which certainly sets you back. When you can't get on the field and you can't implement you could implement the playbook, and certainly I'm sure players' heads are in the playbook learning, but on-field execution, cohesiveness of offensive lines, all those types of things for a lot of these teams have gone by the wayside. Not for Appalachian State, who started their spring practice season early. And they actually, Drew, got in 11 practices out of the allotted 15. They lost, the final 4, including their spring game. But they got 11 chances to get on the field in front of their new offensive coordinator, Tony Peterson, in front of their new defensive coordinator, Dale Jones. And those head coaches got a chance to see their talent on the field, and they got a chance to see their system in action, which is what you like to have the spring for. The head coach here, Sean Clark, promoted from offensive line coach. He head coached the bowl game last year that you referred to, the game in which UAB, actually as a monster underdog, got up early, and then App State came back and won that game pretty much going away. So the head coaching position here, a lot of familiarity with his personnel, with his team. That's not really the problem. What you would have, the major overhaul here would be Tony Peterson coming in. Now, let me give you a couple of quotes from Tony Peterson, who, guys, this is an offensive coordinator who's been around a long, long time. He's been in a lot of places. He's one of those up-tempo, air raid style guys. He's going to come in, and what Elijah Drinkwitz left in place here, his multiple spread offensive system, they're not going to mess around with that. He's going to come in, and basically his quote was, "I'll bring my little things here and there, but we're going to run App State's offense." So there's no real changes to this offensive system, which is nice. Again, you got 11 practices. You got a lot of returning bodies, including a quarterback here. I think that 3 offensive linemen, the whole interior comes back. Not changing anything whatsoever. So offensively, they can be really good again, Drew. They had the on-field time in the spring. Defensively, there's really no changes either because they're bringing back a familiar face. Dale Jones is a guy who's been here before and been here a lot. He's here as recently as 2018 at Appalachian State. Took 1 year at Louisville as inside linebackers coach and comes back home. So again, familiar with the defense that they run, familiar with the personnel on hand, only 1 year separated from it. So like I say, this is probably the best case scenario of all the ones we're going to go through. I think Appalachian State had it the best to get all the springtime on the field, to have the coaching familiarity and cohesiveness that they do, and not to change, not to overhaul either system. I think it's a big deal. And if anybody would be ready to go when summer practice starts in August, should it start up again in August, Appalachian State would be my vote for the team that's in the best shape here out of all these coaching staff changes.
Nice. Okay, so the quarterback, Zach Thomas, I believe was his name.
Mm-hmm.
He's coming back?
Yeah, quarterback returns.
And same playbook. They're keeping the
same playbook because – and it's interesting, Drew, because Franklin could have changed it. I mean, he's a guy who's been around a lot of air raid. You can trace him back to Middle Tennessee State and a bunch of other places. He's a veteran. He comes to App State from Mizzou, where he was offensive analyst last year. Prior to that, he was East Carolina's offensive coordinator and QB coach. So he's an up-tempo guy, but didn't want to mess with this. What App State has in place. Really, Elijah Drinkwitz didn't mess much with it. He added some of his stuff, his playbook, to what Appalachian State already had. So this is a very, very cohesive and nice fluid situation here. I don't think we have to worry too much about Appalachian State and these guys not knowing assignments, maybe coming out of the gate slow. They're really in pretty good shape here.
Yeah, Robbie, just going over their schedule from last year. Yeah, they did beat that Louisiana team, which was I thought the Raging Cajuns were really good last year. Also, they beat South Carolina. I forgot about that one. They went into the SEC territory and came out not only covering but winning. This upcoming year, they start off with Morgan State. They got at Wake Forest and at Wisconsin. So at 2 Power 5 teams back to back there in weeks 2 and 3 before lightening up with UMass. And then out the gate, Louisiana and Georgia Southern, followed by Arkansas State. So talking about Sun Belt opponents, guys, if you're not familiar with the smaller conferences, I mean, if you had to pick 3 of the big boys out of the conference, that'd probably be the 3 other than App State there, Robbie. So right out the gate, we're going to know a lot about App State in the first 6 weeks here, Robbie. Yeah,
there's no question. I think they'll be the team that everybody shoots for. They will be the team that gets everybody else's best effort. Obviously, UL Lafayette's on the rise. No question about that. You would expect Arkansas State to be right there as well, like you just said. And Georgia Southern, always very, very difficult with the offense that they run. So again, this program, Drew, it could have been worse for them. They could have gone without any spring practices on the field like many did. But I think they'll be in pretty good shape here. So where power ratings are concerned, where this team ended last season, where they closed, will probably be very similar to where they kick off the 2020 season.
And Robbie, we're keeping it ABC order here. I think you texted me Appstate, Baylor, Arkansas, but
yeah,
we should go Arkansas second here. So talking about the SEC West, which we spoke about earlier, Chad Morris, not sure if he quit or shown the door. Either way, he's going to stay in the SEC West, though, and be the offensive coordinator for Auburn. I know him and Gus Malzahn were pretty close friends, so I'm sure he's doing all right and well paid. But Arkansas here, new head coach, new offensive coordinator, and new defensive coordinator. They bring over Sam Pittman. He was the offensive line coach at Georgia. So making the offensive line coach to head coaching position in the SEC, that's a pretty big jump here, Robbie. I don't know too much about his background. I guess I'll throw it over to you. We got Kendall Briles as the OC. In my opinion, that's a good OC hire. But does he have kind of what it takes? There's a lot that goes with being a head coach here at a major Division I football program, Robbie.
Yeah, and I think when you're the head of the program, Drew, like any other organization, the best thing to do is surround yourself with good and knowledgeable people. The head coach obviously makes final decisions, but when you have the kind of input that you're going to get from Kendall Briles at offensive coordinator, you just let him go. You can oversee stuff, but Kendall Briles is a proven commodity. You let him go. And Barry Odom is a long-time proven commodity as a defensive coordinator. Didn't work out as a head coach at Missouri, but as a DC, he's very, very good. And so you have two guys like that. It's kind of, you could almost relate it to what Matt Luke did at Ole Miss last year when he brought in Rich Rodriguez and Mike McIntyre as his DC, bringing in two former head coaches to be his coordinators, surrounded himself with really knowledgeable people. I think that's a good way to go. Sam Pittman has been an offensive line coach almost the entire decade. I mean, he was with Georgia from 16 to 2019, and before that, he was the Arkansas. He's coming back home. He was Arkansas's offensive line coach from 2013 to 15. So it's an area he knows well, and certainly Kendall Briles knows what he's doing. Barry Odom knows what he's doing. Let's go through this offense, Drew, because, Arkansas is a real unique case study in the fact that they, went from Brett Bielema to Chad Morris. Chad Morris really had it rough. I mean, when you inherit Brett Bielema's personnel and the Dan Enos system, which is basically a play-action system, and you come in as Chad Morris running multiple spread that you learned from Clemson, it's a major overhaul. It's a 360-degree turn. He didn't have the personnel to fit his system. When he finally did start bringing some in, he gets shown the door. I think Kendall Briles has it a lot easier as an offensive coordinator here, and obviously Sam Pittman will have it easier as a head coach because the change isn't really that much. Briles is going to come in. He refers to his scheme as multiple. Obviously, it's a high up-tempo style of offense, very diverse. If you watch Florida Atlantic when he was there with Lane Kiffin, sometimes it's run-based. Sometimes it can be pass-based. It's usually balanced, Drew, but it can go either way depending upon personnel. So the multiple scheme is not really much different than Joe Craddock, the guy who was shown the door. Joe Craddock was the OC for Chad Morris, obviously another multiple spread system. It's not all that different. Here's what Briles says about his offense. We want to play with a lot of tempo. We want to run the football. We want to throw the football downfield. We'll take whatever the defense gives us. We're going to have wide splits. We're going to be very physical. So right in that, two-sentence quote, you understand it's an adaptable system. It's going to go fast. We've seen it on the field. Terminology is going to be a little different here, but as we just stated, Drew, it's more the on-field part of spring practice, not having it, that will hurt these teams. It's not necessarily the playbook. These kids can bury their heads in the terminology and have it all down pat by the time they hit the field again. So I don't worry too much about terminology here as far as offense is concerned. But again, when you don't have a single practice to evaluate your talent, to make sure that the blocking schemes, the new blocking schemes are learned, it's difficult. It's a setback. So offensively, not a major system overhaul, but still on-field time, lacking that on-field time is going to hurt them a little bit. And on the defensive side, Sam Pittman and Barry Odom are longtime friends. That's what led to that hire. They're very much on the same page as far as defensive scheme is concerned. Barry Odom is a guy who can go from 3-4 to 4-3. It doesn't really matter. You come in, you look at the personnel, you say we're short on defensive line rotation. Maybe we don't have 8 DLs, SEC caliber DL that we can run in and out. So we'll go 3-4. But he can adapt either way depending upon what he sees at Arkansas. Again, not having these guys on the field to check it out kind of hurts. But you could expect him to probably run 4-3. That's what he's used to. He likes to refer to it as 4-3 multiple because he can adjust. He's a smart guy, Drew, and he's got a real good history, a real good track record of producing good defenses. In fact, when Mizzou was going south on the defensive end a little bit, he took over the reins and straightened it out. I think in his third year of his tenure, second or third year. So I have no problem with the coaches here. I think he did a great job in hiring the coordinators. But, when you don't get to see the practice field, it's going to be, like I say, a common theme as we go through these shows. It's very, very difficult to project how advanced or how far behind these particular teams are going to be. I think coaching-wise, they're in good shape. We'll see. These guys want to get a good look at their personnel, and they just have not been able to do that.
Yeah, Robbie, Arkansas, you touched on it, just a very interesting case study. I mean, switching these styles, going from Brett Bielema to Chad Morris, that was pretty crazy to think that you're just going to turn it around in a year or two. Right. Not to mention, you're in there with the big boys. I mean, it doesn't get any tougher than the SEC West outside of the NFL here. So it was almost like Chad Morris. He almost didn't have a shot, Robbie. And coming out here, I do agree with you. The style of play is a lot better for Razorbacks fans. I mean, I think that they could come in and be a little bit more competitive. Now, this year, they start off Nevada, then they go at South Bend. So they're at Notre Dame to already a difficult schedule where you're kind of going to be punching up in class in the SEC. We're talking about teams Alabama, LSU, Auburn, Ole Miss. Like you talked about. I mean, we got Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach jumping in the SEC West as well. I mean, this is kind of a power conference here. And then you got kind of Sam Pittman, who's a little bit of an unknown to a lot of college football fans out there, maybe outside the state of Georgia. So, again, I think that they're, more than a year away here. Just a 2-10 campaign last year. I don't necessarily have Arkansas circled to bet on here just because of the caliber of opponent that they're going to be facing this year. However, I could be wrong. They could be, kind of a point spread darling here and kind of ride under the radar. It's going to be interesting to watch. Also wanted to talk about kind of a handicapping 101 here. You brought up App State had 11 spring practices. In Arkansas, I think you touched on the fact they didn't have any. I'm starting to think that the teams that didn't have any spring practices and a change at either OC, DC, or head coach, that might be kind of look to fade those teams in the early weeks of this upcoming season. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's what we're trying to tell people here, Drew, is chart them. I mean, we're going to go through 24 full coaching staff change. And by full, I mean head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. In most cases, it's right down the line. Bring your people in. But in many cases, there are some guys retained. But as far as head coach, offensive coordinator, and defensive coordinator are concerned, 24 of those out there. There are, in going through all of these teams, Drew, there are 21 of them that didn't get a practice on field. Okay. Some teams, Appalachian State got 11. A couple others got 1 or 2 stragglers before spring break hit. So it really, really hurts those teams. You want to put that, I don't know how you mark them, if you mark them with an F for fade, or if you mark them with an asterisk, however you mark them out there, mark these teams as really big question marks, because when college football comes back, they're going to be trying to jam 15 spring practices and 15 August sessions all into one. And that's about impossible to do. When they hit the field for opening kickoff, they're going to be behind. We're trying to look for best case scenarios. In Arkansas's case, Drew, we remember the trouble that they went through last year at starting quarterback. Nick Starkel was lousy. Ben Hicks was lousy. All these quarterbacks they were running through. By the end, they were down to true freshman KJ Jefferson. Felipe Franks, the ex-Florida Gator quarterback, transferred to Arkansas. He's going to be their starting quarterback this year, and he gets no on-field time with his core of receivers. Again, in these spread type offenses where passing games are timing based, you like to have some time with your receivers. And even if these kids were still on campus and could go outside and work alone with each other, that would be one story. But now they're all back in their home states, unable to work out with each other. And it sets a lot of timing and rhythm issues back. These are just bad. And I don't want to say they're bad. They're tough situations to overcome for these new coaches with new coaching staffs, and zero time on the field to evaluate your personnel, and zero time for the kids to work together. So if you're out there, as we go through these teams, note them. Appalachian State, put a big check mark next to them. They got the best of all worlds here. Almost. They didn't get all 15, but they got 11. Arkansas, they didn't have it so good. And the next team we're going to talk about, Baylor, they didn't have any spring practices either. So there's a lot of those out there.
Well, let's get after it, Robbie. We got the Baylor Bears, the third team we'll talk about on today's show, the last team. And guys, remember, reach out on Twitter at Rob Veno Sports, at Drew Martin Bets. Let us know if you're liking the show. If not, what we need to do to improve it, and what you'd like to hear on shows going forward. This is the College Football Preview 2020 with Rob Veno and Drew Martin. Last team here we'll talk about on today's show, Robbie, the Baylor Bears. Matt Rule out. Heading to the NFL, Dave Aranda in the LSU defensive coordinator. So he just won a national championship, Robbie. Now he's taking a head coaching position in the Big 12. I'll tell you, Robbie, last year, Baylor, one of the more impressive teams. I mean, when you start talking about teams that kind of, overachieves almost the wrong word, just surprising teams. I mean, Robbie, they beat every team on their schedule, not named Oklahoma and Georgia last year. It's pretty impressive, man. I tip my cap to Baylor. Can they continue this under Dave Aranda, in your opinion?
Yeah, and especially, Drew, on the defensive side of the football last year, Baylor being a Big 12 team, they were extremely tough. I think they were and maybe Oklahoma was the number one rated defense, but they were right there. Perhaps Baylor was. I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but I think that was a big surprise. And maybe it shouldn't have been a surprise, because Matt Rule and Phil Snow, the defensive coordinator, his defensive coordinator, they sort of done that everywhere they've been. First year, they weed everything out. Second year is a huge leap in success. It was a huge leap in success last year for Baylor. Now bring in Dave Aranda. Obviously, we knew him at Wisconsin, stellar defensive coordinator, on to LSU, stellar defensive coordinator. And it's interesting, Drew, because Alabama, out of the SEC West, is usually the team that gets their coaching staff rated annually. Mm-hmm. OC goes somewhere else. DC goes somewhere else. This time it's LSU. They join the party. Joe Brady goes with Matt Rule to the Carolina Panthers. Of course, Joe Brady's offense went wild last year under the direction of Joe Burrow and a top flight class of wide receivers, running back, offensive line, the whole works. But now, not only do they lose Joe Brady, but they lose Dave Aranda as well. So we'll see if LSU can rebuild on the coaching staff front the way that Alabama usually rebuilds. Aranda's in. His first hire, Larry Fedora, ex-UNC head coach. Larry Fedora comes in as the offensive coordinator. We know him. He's a high-tempo guy. He's a spread guy.
Robbie, he's a good OC. He knows his offense. Those Southern Mississippi offenses were good. They threw the ball around. They scored a lot of points, Robbie.
And you have to believe that they will here too. Again, Charlie Brewer, your starting quarterback with a guy like this. We saw that they had all kinds of talent at the wide receiver position last year. Now, Denzel Mims is going to be in the NFL draft, but they have talent behind that, certainly, that can capitalize on what Larry Fedora wants to do. Here's what he wants to do. We're going to spread the field and be multi-tempo. We're going to get the ball in our playmakers' hands. That's what he's done his entire career. We need to do that. It's generally speaking, Drew, it's a pass first, pass oriented with Larry Fedora. I mean, these spreads are all different kinds. You can get run oriented spreads, the Urban Meyer power spread. This one happens to like to throw the football. And let's get back to LSU a little bit here as far as losing coaches is concerned. Jorge Munoz was the passing game analyst last year for LSU, worked side by side with Joe Brady and the LSU offensive staff. And here he is at Baylor. Larry Fedora says he's extremely excited to work with him on the passing game at Baylor. Again, this is stuff you would like to have 15 spring practices for. You'd like to get Charlie Brewer out there on the field in this new scheme with these new ideas, with this new playbook. And let's get going. Unfortunately for Baylor, they couldn't. Their spring practice was canceled before they could even hit the field. Playbook knowledge, they'll have to have their heads buried in the playbook. But like a lot of other teams that we're talking about right here, Drew, they probably are a step behind because of the lack of on-field chance to execute, chance to gain some rhythm, quarterback to wide receivers. Defensively, here's an interesting one for you. The defensive coordinator here is going to be Ron Roberts, longtime defensive coordinator. You want to know who taught Dave Aranda the business? It was Ron Roberts. Dave Aranda goes out and hires his mentor as far as defensive coordinating is concerned, learned what he implements through him, and has given Roberts the keys to the entire defense. You would think Dave Aranda, as head coach, would want to have a pretty good say in defense, but he's going to take the CEO approach. Roberts will be the game day play caller. He will run the defense here. It's going to be 3-4 multiple. It's going to be what Aranda has run his entire stint as a DC, whether it be at Utah State, Wisconsin, or at LSU last year. So it'll be a 3-4, multiple style 3-4. And this is the guy he learned it from. So you can expect to see all the attributes of a Dave Aranda defense here in Baylor. Cohesiveness, fluidity, no question there. These guys are both on the same page, so I like that. Again, we're going to get so repetitive, Drew, but this guy's had no chance to see his defense on the field. It's a different defense than Matt Rule runs. And guys, you know, when you change from, let's say, 4-3 base to a 3-4 base, not only does it involve a new playbook, but those involve personnel changes. Defensive ends in a 4-3 have to become either hybrid linebackers or outside linebackers in a 3-4. So you start switching guys' positions all around, and you need to see these guys on the field to see which guys can execute that the best. A lot of guys can't. So a little bit of a setback, although Aranda has the highest praise for Roberts, and he says he'll get their defense to the highest level. I don't doubt that. You just have to doubt that they can get it going as quick as they want to because they missed 15 spring practices.
Robbie, I love it, man. Great breakdowns. And Matt Rule taking more of the, Dave Aranda taking more of the CEO approach and kind of delegating the play calling to his DC. I actually love that. I mean, first-year head coaches that try to call plays as well, either on the offensive or defensive side, you know, a sharp angle. I don't know if it's a sharp angle. It's an angle I've used and had success in the past is fading those teams out the gate just because I don't think a lot of guys realize what the head coach has on his plate. He's got a lot on his mind, and to be calling plays on top of that, I just think it's too much. So I look to kind of fade those guys. And Dave Aranda obviously not going to be in that pack, delegating it out to his DC, I think is a good choice. But Robbie, great breakdowns overall. First college football preview 2020, almost in the bag here, Robbie. But next Tuesday, guys, we will be back. Make sure to reach out at Rob Veno Sports, at Drew Martin Bets. Let us know what you want to hear, ways to improve. And if you like the show, we always like hearing that stuff. But Robbie, throw it over to you. Anything else you wanted to throw out before we shut this down?
Yeah, when we come back, Drew, next Tuesday, we'll go through Boston College, Colorado, and Colorado State. 3 more teams with 3 full coaching staff changes as we go down in alphabetical order. You were talking before about how I ruined the alphabet in my first text to you. I think my original text was even worse because I think I included Boston College in the first grouping, which shows how bad I am at the alphabet. But hopefully you guys, we're just trying to give you some info that maybe you haven't researched yet. Watch us do the research for you, and then you can go ahead and upgrade or downgrade these teams as we go through 8 different shows of coaching changes. Like we said earlier, Drew, we'll move on from there. We'll go through full schedule analysis of teams. Guys, we'll get to future boards. We'll get to Heisman Trophy odds, winning championship odds, division or conference win odds, all that types of stuff. Game of the year numbers, game of the year lines that come out early. We'll get to all of that in another phase of this show. But like Drew said earlier, we're looking to possibly go multiple days during the week. So if you want to hear it more, just let us know. And that way we can tack on additional times here. But it's good to see you again, buddy, because I miss podcasts. And when I had this idea in my head, I said, damn, I need a host. So let me text Drew because I need a host to get this done. And I think it went pretty smooth. Hopefully you all listening liked it today.
Absolutely, Robbie. Always good to see you, buddy, and look forward to next Tuesday. And heck, guys, if you're liking it, let us know, and we'll expand it to more days during the week. And hopefully college football kicks off on time. So, Robbie, thanks for the time, buddy. I guess best of luck. Stay safe. Wash your hands. And everybody out there, stay safe. Thanks for listening.